Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Pushing out my audio.
It's okay, no problem. And Garrett is back. All right, now the shoe's on the other foot. I'm gonna hand over the captain of this ship's roll, maybe a bit to Garrett, since this is my article. It is my article. And again, I'll just preface this as a disclaimer that this isn't my final word on this. This child-free discourse or movement, for lack of a better words, kind of been grating on me for a while. And I've been kind of, bookmarking and saving little, writing little things here and there. And what prompted me to write it out and to share it was actually the brouhaha over JD Vance's childless cat lady comment, because one of the things that people were responding to, like, no, it's that we're child free, we're not childless, and this type of thing, and it kind of got me thinking, like, oh yeah, I don't like childless. I don't like calling people childless and as like a dig, and I also don't like people calling them. I don't like this idea of child free, like somehow, makes children sound like cancer or something. And not that I'm not opposed. If people don't want to have kids, then don't have kids. That's and I'm very much aware of the fact that kids, especially if they're not your own, or if they are your own, can be a challenge, especially if you're on the airplane and whatnot. Who of us hasn't gotten on a plane, and if someone with an infant or a toddler is sitting right by you, you're like, oh dear, how is this gonna go? Especially if their ears plug up when the plane takes off, and then then you're going to be in for a wild ride. But anyway, that was what kind of got me onto this. And my argument that I try to make is that while it's kind of said as like, child free, especially from a liberal feminist or from a kind of a neoliberal thing, I'm not childless, I'm child free, and and I get to do what I want. I don't have to be responsible for kids and this, that, and the other. Okay, I wanted to highlight or flag, I guess you could say, what I see as being possibly some of the what you could call anti-family for sure, or anti-woman, not woman, but mother, and also social, and kind of, just anti-human in a, in a way, when we get to the people who really believe that we have to half the population or we're all going to die, type of worst case scenario situations. That was kind of just like the background about why I decided to write something on this, because what I had been writing about had been primarily on Israel Palestine, but also a bit on the gender stuff, and also all kind of manufacturing of consent and other things. So this is a bit of a maybe a wild card, especially if people label you in a certain way and they think you're this feminist or you think you're whatever, and then you write this and they're like, anyway, so Garrett, on that note, how do either of you have something you want to say about this before we get into some of the comments that I make, some of the critiques I make of this child free and proud movement?
Um,
Go ahead, Garrett.
I mean, I agree with you about the the anti-natalist thing it definitely has like a liberal hegemony from the cathedral, I think. I mean, I think the implications and the insinuations, and in some cases the statements from the climate movement, all kind of point towards depopulation. They seldom say it outright, partly because there's been a lot of pushback from environmentalists from the global south, environmentalists of color, were disturbed by the sort of eugenicist, Malthusian undertones of that kind of stuff, and the sort of, and also like valorization of poverty, I guess, that kind of goes along with it. Like when they actually had Obama go to Africa and say, there's no way we're going to let you have air conditioning in cars because the planet can't handle it. I don't know if he mentioned anything about family size in that speech, but Vance is kind of tapping into something that's a lot of people have been thinking about in terms of the antenatal message of the culture.
Yeah, so I just wanted to again, it's a bit wide ranging. I'll just start off about first of all, is it a discourse? Is it a movement? And like all these things that we tend to use, I think sometimes we all assume that people know what we mean, or that we know what we mean. Everyone knows what a discourse is. Everyone knows what that is. So I say that the child-free phenomenon can be understood as both a discourse and a movement, but it primarily functions as a discourse. And so when I say the cultural narrative child-free concept, it's a cultural narrative. So the child-free concept shapes and is shaped by cultural narratives about the family, gender roles. And by gender, I just mean male, female. I'm not into anything beyond that. Personal freedom. And it influences public opinion, media representations, and societal norms. And language and labels. The terminology child-free versus childless reflects deeper societal attributes and values, or attitudes and values. This discourse shapes how people think about and discuss reproduction. And we had a bit of a back and forth with one of the morbid symptoms contributors, who was saying, well, what's the big, and I'm just paraphrasing, like, well, what's the big deal? So if I call myself child free, or people will often say, I'm child free this weekend, or when I'm child free. And my point was, well, that's a different, like, I've also have said that, like, hey, I'm child free tonight because, whatever, but that's a bit of a difference than someone saying child free as if it's like it's an accomplishment, or it's some sort of identity to be touted. While I'm certainly against people being denigrated, particularly women, but obviously there are men who either decide not to have kids or don't have kids for either there's medical reasons or financial reasons, or they just don't meet someone who wants to have kids with them, or they fall in love with someone who doesn't want to have kids. I mean, there's all variety of reasons for why people don't have children. But I wanted to push back on them as that it's not just that language isn't private. Yeah, it's the same thing as saying, well, it doesn't matter if we call men women and women men. These preferred pronouns don't matter, when we can see that it can have quite a slippery slope effect. And an ideological framework. So it frames individual decisions within broader debates about personal freedom and feminism, societal expectations. And I should have added, I didn't add, I left the environmental aspect out of it, the environmental movement out of it. But I was aware that was the case, that's also a part of it. Because it's also like it's a virtuous thing. Like, I'm doing the world a favor. I'm doing Mother Nature a favor by not having kids. Whereas these people who are having especially if you have lots of kids. And I've had 3 kids. I've had people ask me, like, well, why would you do that? Don't you care about the environment? And in like, I'm paraphrasing. I was like, well, Jesus, it's like, and then I feel kind of guilty. I'm like, well, and then I find myself like, I was only going to have 2. And then I'm like, well, fuck you. I mean, whatever. It's like, I'm not, but this idea that somehow it's bad. Like, if you're going to have a kid, okay, 1, 2, 5. Anything more than 2, you're like some sort of, crazy rabbit or something that can't control their sexual urges. I don't know. Anyway, but and most of the pushback that I got on this, to the extent that I did, was from people coming on it from an environmental thing, thinking and that's when I realized that I touched on that. Of course, this is ideological, because people are like, well, wait a minute, what do you mean? How could this not be a good thing for more people to be quote unquote child free? Anyway, and of course the influence on policy. So this discourse in terms of narrative, language, and labels, and the ideological framework that what we would think of as or been encouraged to think of as a very personal, private, individual decision, rather than the broader, rather being like a species, biological one and a cultural one, and particularly an economic one. And it influences on policy and debate. And Zulaika brought up a couple of, not Obama. I keep on wanting to say Obama instead of Kamala. Sorry. Can't imagine why. And it's not because the color of their skin. It's because of the cell, how we're being encouraged to view this candidacy. Anyway, so discourse affects policy discussions, workplace practices, and social expectations around parenting and reproductive choices. So that's just kind of what I mean when I say discourse. But there's also a movement. So in the movement, of course, these things are not there's not a hard line between them. But so the movement be advocacy in communities. So there are organized groups and communities that advocate for and normalize the acceptance of this quote unquote child-free choice. These groups provide support, share resources, and promote their perspective through various platforms. You should be child-free. Join us. And there's social media activism. There's events and symbols. So there's also lots of figures who celebrate this. Or also there's also I think in a line to this, there's a connection between celebrating being child free as an accomplishment and some of the people who want to like celebrate the amount of abortions they have. That somehow, isn't it so fantastic that I've had 4 or 5 abortions when they would want to make it illegal. And just to out myself on that, I am from the position that abortion is a necessary evil is a bit of a strong word, but a necessary thing to have, and that it should be safe and legal, but rare. I think celebrating abortion is also gross. That's just me. But I don't want them to be banned or illegal or anything like that. But I don't think this idea that somehow, or the people that want to present having abortion like they're having their teeth cleaned. It's like, no, it kills a fetus that if the fetus had not been aborted, likely would have reached term and been born and had, who knows, some sort of lifespan. So I don't see any reason in denying that. We should have an adult conversation about what this is. There's a lot of, we have this idea that we shouldn't kill people, but there's all kinds of caveats. Yeah. So we can say like, yeah, that, but anyway, I think there's a connection between a kind of a radical stance on abortion that celebrates it almost, or some people do. It's like, I had an abortion, yay. It's like, I find that problematic. Anyway, so while there are elements of both the discourse and the movement, the child-free phenomena is primarily a discourse because I would argue it fundamentally revolves around shaping cultural narratives and influencing norms and engaging in ideological debates, childless, child-free. Now we have this figure like the childless cat lady and the child-free, urban professional who, can sleep late on the weekend and can party when they want. Who knows what? Which, can be fun. And the movement aspect, while significant, serves to propagate the discourse. And before I stop here and see what you guys want to ask or say, I've been very bad at giving up the captain's hat. Sorry, Garrett, you can take it if you want. I found this and I was just surprised. Like, I knew that this thing had become like an identity, like a lifestyle, this child-free lifestyle, but there's actually groups. So here's one that's called childfree.com or childfree or we or something like that. And it says helping you. So you have all these women here. For I guess it's just women. I guess men aren't. I mean, I guess if they're child-free, they're bachelors. I don't know. Helping you feel connected and inspired and fulfilled on your child-free journey. We are child-free. Okay, we are child-free. This group or this website is a storytelling project and community that celebrates and empowers child-free lives. So I'll stop there and see what you guys want to say so far.
I mean, it's interesting because
Zulaika, can
early
you turn
on
your?
before.
Is it possible? Sorry, is it possible for you to turn your volume down a bit, or no? Your microphone volume, or is that built into your computer? I
I
could
can
turn
turn
my
it
volume
down.
down.
Is that
If you can't,
better?
yeah, okay. And I can also turn
Is it
myself
better?
down a bit. Yeah, that's better. Go ahead.
Okay. Yeah, what I find interesting is that sort of at the sort of 1907, they like Roosevelt gave this speech and he decried the race suicide of the upper class women, and they were very concerned about all of these women, white women who were suffragettes,
Not
refusing to
having
get
babies.
married.
Yeah.
Yes, and not having
Mhm.
babies. And like Margaret Sanger was hovering around at the time, and so what she wanted to do was combine neo-Malthusianism, feminism, and eugenics, which she did. And but all of the eugenicists were terrified that the birth control and abortion aspects of her ideology would create a race suicide, quote unquote. And most of the women you see advocating for child free are white, upper to middle class women.
Yeah, and that's what I thought. And again, and people could be, and then again, people say, well, I'm working class and I'm child free. I'm like, okay, I'm saying obviously there's going to be outliers, but I'm saying to me, this is a total what I would say now PMC bourgeois urban professional type of movement. And there could also be the political economy part of it. I have a Tony who co-hosts the show sometimes is in LA, and he's saying that there's a big divide. You have a lot of professional PMC women in their late 20s and 30s, where there isn't enough men in that class cohort. And he thinks, and that would be like maybe that's one of the reasons why you get this child freeze. You're kind of trying to make a virtue out of a necessity, maybe. Like I wonder that like are you really like are you quote unquote child free and embracing this, whatever this is, or is it because there's not enough men in your class pool, or is it economically that it's just really difficult because with housing prices and a lot of these women I'm sure are quite high educated, but doesn't mean that they've gotten that job they thought they were going to get. So there still could be some economic things going on here. But I think, yeah, I mean, and they would say class race suicide, but now it's like we use the term of like population collapse, if you want to be very dramatic, or decline, or replacement. So people are talking about immigration and rather in terms of replacement. And I get that a lot of people say that as a scary term to kind of like to try to get the race to maybe could also use that as a race baiting thing. But it's true. If whatever the population color is, if the women there aren't having a certain amount of babies and you want to maintain your population, you're going to have to increase immigration. And then you need to have countries that have a surplus of working age people, or you're going to poach them and then cause those countries problems. The quote unquote brain drain is also an issue. Yeah, where you have a lot of countries like India is one, but also not only where they have a lot of doctors. We have a lot of there's a lot of people will do the first part, if not all of their training, and then go off to a better wage situation. I'm not going to begrudge them that, but it causes other problems. So yeah, I think I'm glad that you brought that up, because again, I've been meaning to go back because I'd heard this every once in a while, like people don't want to talk about the eugenic aspects of quote unquote left movements, or what movements we would think of as left. That Dubois also, some of this like the talented 10th, and they were also concerned with I don't know what we would call it eugenics, but maybe they were calling it family planning, or wanting to encourage the quote unquote underclasses or the problematic classes within their Black community, of also wanting them to have less kids. So thank you for bringing that, and that's an important thing that I should bring in if I take this forward, is the historical aspect, because right now it's very much just a snapshot of like the last 10 years or so. Garrett?
Yeah. Let me just first say that, like, you're probably losing. I don't want to generalize too much, but like, you should be a little suspicious of any movement that's like purely in negative terms, like child free. Like, they've cleaned it up to where it's not childless or anti-child, but it's like you're still centering the children, you know, and it's like. It indicates there's some kind of void in your life that you know, like they and I guess I would also say as I said, I brought up the environmentalist thing because I guess primarily because I'm a man and I don't think about, you know, this sort of
do you call yourself child free, Garrett?
You know,
I mean, maybe in dating it's a bonus. Like, I'm Garrett, I'm child free.
It sounds nicer than childless. I guess it's a fact, but I wouldn't like, you know.
Yeah, but you have enough sense not to call yourself.
I wouldn't join the child-free movement.
Yeah, well, also shows that Garrett's responsible. Yeah, he, you know, he's not going around spreading that seed willy nilly. Sorry, Garrett.
But
part of the.
Go ahead, Zulaika, first.
When it comes to men and child-free, they could have 10 kids, but if they're not in contact.
Okay, Zulaika, you're going in and out. I don't know if you want to like drop go in and out. Maybe sometimes if you like drop off and then come back in. I don't know, but let's see. But yeah, of course, yeah, being child-free. Yeah, men can have children and still quote unquote be child free if their responsibilities are of course women can abandon their kids, but they're less likely to do so because we actually birthed them and then there they are. But it's like anyway, so go ahead, Garrett. You wouldn't say like I'm child free. You're not joining one of these groups to talk about your child free stories and your child free journey. Oh my God, I hate the word journey. I used to not, but now everything's a fucking journey. It's like, shut up. I'm on a journey. I'm on a poverty journey. I'm on an unemployment journey. I'm really discovering a lot about myself. It's like, shut up.
Well, now that you brought it up,
going to the moon. That's a journey.
Maybe I can spin this. If I go on the dating app, I can be like, join me on my child-free journey.
Yeah. Don't worry about that tick, tick, tick biological clock, Kenny.
But I don't know. I mean, I kind of do have personal reasons probably for being childless that have to do with bad things in my genetic makeup. It's a long story. And then I think I adopted like an ideological position for it actually when I was younger, and I was a hardcore environmentalist. And I kind of did believe in Neo-Malthusianism and like population control stuff that I obviously don't believe in much anymore. I'm not on the whole sort of Greta Thunberg, Al Gore train the way that I used to be. And Marxism, not many people realize, like, he was explicitly anti-Malthus. Like, he had nothing but contempt for Malthusianism, and it was just like an alibi.
Garrett, hold on just a second. Zulaika, can you hear us or no? Okay, now you can. Okay, sorry, she was having issues. I just wanted to see. Okay, go ahead. Yes. So Marx and the Malthusians.
Yeah, Marx, not many people seem to realize, like, was like the ultimate anti-Malthusian, and like he had nothing but contempt because Malthus was an economist. He was an ultra-capitalist free market economist, and Marx saw this as just a capitalist alibi for why there was poverty.
Too many kids.
Just
Yeah.
too many kids.
And too many certain kinds of kids. They probably said that back then, but now it's a bit of a,
Oh, well, he definitely
Specifically Irish
was pointing
ones.
his finger particularly at
Irish,
the
Irish twins. Yeah.
yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Should I? Okay.
Yes, tell us more about Malthus and Marx, because they had a argument. Malthus and Marx and Engels.
Oh, Marx.
There was like a push to sort of criticize Malthus at the time, and Marx was very, as Garrett said, very strong on it. But just to sort of, in the same vein, like most, if not all of the more successful Marxist revolutionaries have been very staunchly anti any kind of Malthusianism, especially Mao, but Lenin wrote an article in response to a physicians' congress criticizing their response to legalizing abortion legalizing abortion entirely by criticizing them as, what was it, Philistines and liberal something for others. But yeah, I thought I'd just add that to context.
Please, yeah, that's why you're here, man, or lady. Sorry.
But I was
Gender
interested
neutral
to hear
man.
about Garrett. I was interested to hear about Garrett and how he got to Neo-Malthusianism from his environmentalism.
I don't know. I mean, I think it's kind of built into environmentalism a certain scarcity view of the world, that there's limited resources, and even the climate thing is sort of, I think, based on the idea that there's a limited amount of atmosphere to absorb all of our emissions. So like I think I'm still very much against too much experimental technology, and I'm concerned about toxins and stuff in the air and water and so on, which may possibly be lowering our sperm counts, by the way, in a related issue. And I'm still that kind of environmentalist, but a lot of environmentalism is they openly call themselves Neo-Malthusians because they're constantly concerned about scarce resources, and that overproduction, is a greater danger than underproduction.
Yeah. Well, that brings me up because we have a mutual. We'll say, I'm not going to mention his name because he's lovely, but he's anyway, who pushed back on this, and who was basically, because when I shared this article online, the thing I drawed out on purpose was basically the biological, or the fertility imperative, or the biological imperative, around 2.1 children per female of any group. It could be a small Amazonian tribe or a nation or a race or whatever. That if you want to maintain the numbers that there are today, this is basically given the mortality rate and infant mortality, what you have to do. And so, and this is something that both liberal, that people who want to make having a child are not a purely individual issue, or also ones who want to make it like somehow traditional or somehow odd to want to have kids, don't address, is that and one of the reasons, and I knew that might, because I didn't address the environmental part, but I did mention that, but I didn't address saying like this is also something that environmentalists don't address when they have the either expressed or implied argument that we need to decrease the population in order to save the planet or whatever it is that we're saving. And quickly it was like, quickly people were like, I was crazy. A couple of like, what do you mean? Why on earth we want to maintain the population rate? Of course we have to, we can't just like blow the lid off this place and blah blah blah. And I go, this wasn't a normative, like we can have a normative argument, but this is just an objective statement, that demographer, people are like, where do you get this term? You just make this up, or where is this term? I'm like, well, there's these people called demographers who do demography, and it's a pretty standard term. Now, I'm not saying that you should. I didn't say that we have to maintain the current population of all these groups, or that we shouldn't. I was just saying that to look at this as a purely individual issue, or to not look at the negative effects if you're actively trying to encourage more women not to have kids or to have less kids, there's repercussions that you can't always immediately see. And it definitely connects to the immigration debate, or it should. Some people want, and the people who want to include that, and they could be racist, immediately get called racist. Or they want all women in the kitchen barefoot and pregnant and all kinds of stuff. And maybe some of them do, but it doesn't mean that they're wrong about the math of population maintenance. And so there was this like, what do you mean? And I go, well, you seem to, and this person, we'll just call him Archie, was like, well, the carrying capacity and this and that. And I go, okay, well, you have this, someone has written about the carrying capacity of the planet. You've believed this and think that this means that we have to drastically, significantly reduce the population. And I would say that is not, that is an opinion, and that a lot of the environmental movement has gone kind of activist, almost religious, or I would say religious, and so I'd be skeptical, because from my point of view, and I don't know this, that first of all, we've been taught to think that the population is just going to grow and grow and grow and grow forever. Most demographers who aren't overtly ideological think it'll barring any kind of white black swan events, we get like, super volcanoes or hit by an asteroid or get, plagues, that the population will probably stabilize around 10 billion people. And that the boom we saw, and that they show that scary graph, like population is here, and all of a sudden they go, oh my God, like they think it's going to go on forever. And it's like, well, yeah, you could look at that and think, oh my Jesus, people are having kids like crazy. We really need to have less kids, or we're going to, breed ourselves out of existence. Or you could say, well, look at those productivity improvements. Look at the advances in science and medicine and education that have allowed us to have such a population increase. Now, I'm not saying it's perfect, no, not at all. But I'm like, you could look at that one graph a variety of different ways. And that I say that, and that people and that also show fertility, global fertility is going down. And it has been going down based on, again, this is based on data, and not all data is collected. People also think that, especially when we live in a place we're constantly being asked questions and surveilled and surveyed, we think that that's like where it is everywhere in the world. And of course, lots of places there's data gaps. But based on the information we know, the global fertility is going down. So in 1963, the average woman had 5 kids, and now the average woman has 2.3 kids. And in places in red are the places in light red or dark red, the places that are not, the women aren't having enough kids to replace the current population. This is based on 2021 data. Now, so my point was like, we have this idea, this population explosion, and of course you look at those numbers and the population did explode, but people tend to think it's just going to go that way forever. That there aren't cultural and political, and particularly political economic shifts that make women have, or need to have, or want to have both less kids. And so we see this, and then he came back about, well, again, carrying capacity. I go, yeah, you think and you believe. I go, what I'm trying to say is that you believe that this carrying capacity has a lot of weight for you. You think the world can only support this many people. And I'm saying under what political conditions? Because I think under consumer capitalism, rapid consumer capitalism, yeah, 10 billion would be very difficult. Yeah. But do I think that with the technology that we have now, with the technology that we're likely to have, that the planet could support 10 billion people? I certainly do. And people look at you like you're a crazy person, these environmentalists, like, oh my God, you're insane. 10 billion people. Ah. It's like, well, you don't know. And
Yeah.
last, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, well, the idea of the population bomb first came out, in the mainstream in like the late 1960s, and it never seems to happen. There was a so-called green revolution in agriculture in the global South that came through for supporting 5 billion, 6 billion plus people.
Yeah, and it was kind of funny because I'll call him Artie. He got mad at me when I said, because again he was like, I go, this sounds kind of religious, like you that you belong to an environmental group or environmental ideology that has an end of days story that requires you to sacrifice, let's say, the yet to be born in order to protect something you call Mother Nature. I mean, it's religious. Now, and I try to preface it like, I'm not saying we shouldn't manage our resources. I'm not saying we shouldn't be good stewards of the economy, or also the economy, but the environment are intertwined. Or I'm aware that there's the big garbage thing in the ocean. I'm aware all this stuff. But it's like, he did not like that. Like, until he was like, there's no need to blah, 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 and this and that. And I'm, and I was like, and then really got hung up on the word sacrifice. So like I was sharing this with her. I was like, why is he so mad at me? Because he seems so calm. He's always so calm. Even in difficult issues like gender and Palestine, he seems calm. And then it was caught up on the sacrifice thing. I go, well, yeah. I go, if you advocate a policy that drastically reduced population, then less people are being born than would have been born. And why is that necessary? Because to save quote unquote Mother Nature from this end of days, this scenario about, we've surpassed our carrying capacity, and to save the planet and all that, and like, okay. And then my favorite part was, it's like, well, why that was, oh, you're being ridiculous, it's sacrifice, blah, blah. And I said, well, and then I said, okay, what's your aim here? Because if your aim is to, if you're thinking that we really need to reduce the population, to save the planet, okay, how are you going to do that? How is that going to be distributed? Who gets to have the kids? How are you going to enforce it? Are you going to do like a kind of a one-child China policy? Because they're having some problems with that. There's a reason why they backed away from it. I think maybe almost I don't know if they officially banish it, but it's more and more. It's not being. It's
phased out. They changed.
No, they have gotten rid of it. Yeah.
Yeah. Because then it gets dicey. If like, oh, whoops, sorry, are bad. And of course, that was also rife with corruption. You could people who could buy off somebody or get a permission or, all kinds of things. Who knows what? Again, allegedly, but I can imagine that if you have that kind of power and there's somebody who wants to have a baby or more than one baby or has more than one baby and wants to avoid the problems of that you pay the right person off or you get the right kind of, I don't know. Corruption is not only Western specific, or it's, anyway. So, and then it was like, and then again, he was really hung up on the sacrifice. Like, are you saying that that we're sacrificing? And I'm just like, look, until I said, look, I go, okay, I go, and like, are you really saying it was that the reducing the population or population is you're sacrificing the yet to be born? And I don't know if he was trying to catch me on advocating some sort of well of souls, something that there's some group of souls someplace that aren't being actualized because not enough women are being vessels for them to come into this thing. I mean, maybe that's the case. So I'm just saying, like, I go, let me use China as an example again. I go, yes, it is a sacrifice. And I said, I find your kind of, dismissing of human life a bit problematic. I go, there were people in China who wanted to have more than one child. Okay. And of course, there was things that if you're living in the rural area and your first kid was a daughter, you could have a son, but there was also some problems with that. But just to keep that straight, so you're supposed to have one kid. So if you wanted to have more than one, maybe you wanted to have 2, 3, 4, who knows what, you were actually required not to have one for the quote unquote good of the country, the good of the of China and the whatever you want to call it, the socialist project, because they had decided there was too many kids. We got to cut down on this. And also, it also resulted in a lot of female fetuses being aborted because because especially in the rural area or any area, you're going to think, okay, a girl is going to get married and go off to some other family, whereas a boy would be more apt to take care of us in our old age. So you had male preference. You had a lot of female aborted, more female aborted fetuses than male ones. And I go, if you want to go and tell the Chinese people that wasn't a sacrifice, go ahead. I wouldn't. He finally shut up. I was like, dude, where are you going with this?
Yeah.
But it was really, and then it's kind of funny. I don't know if you saw this tweet from him, Zulaika, but it was basically he wanted us to affirm his quote unquote right to choose almost. Like, well, what about, is there space for me? Can you be all right with my choices? I'm like, to not have kids. It's like, yeah, we respect your right to choose, dude. Calm down. No one's telling you have to procreate. And what was one last quote, because I was just amazed by this, is he said, well, would you tell the Aborigines that they have to breed up to reach their pre-colonial numbers? And I was like, what? I go, I don't tell people to breed up or breed down. And again, when I used Japan as an example, I wasn't making a normative argument. I was just saying that they're having a problem. And if the Japanese, the country of
Chinese?
Japan can immigrate more people, but the Japanese as an ethnic group, if they don't start having more kids, they're going to continue to dwindle in numbers. Now, I'm not saying that's bad or good. I'm just saying that's what's going to happen. And it was just, I couldn't believe that. You remember that tweet when he said, would you tell them to quote unquote breed up? I was like, what? No, I would not tell them to breed up.
Now that's a t-shirt.
Yeah, breed up. Like, you all have to have 4 kids maximum or minimum. I was like, dude, it was crazy. But he finally, but he was convinced. That chart, I'm like, yeah, but it's not, there's people who most demographers say that they expect global population will stabilize around 10 billion. Now, black swan, things can happen. There could be crazy wars. There could be, unexpected disease, all kinds of things. But based on what they
vaccination injuries.
Mass vaccination, yeah. But just like based on like, okay, where we see things going and what we know from the past, what happens as women become more educated, and as the and if you have the switch from agriculture, the structural switch in the economy from the primary sector to the industrial and the services, that women tend to have fewer kids. That's why women aren't having on average 4 to 5 kids anymore. They're having the global average is 2.3. And also, the population bomb wasn't necessarily, people forget this. One thing is all the people are having all these crazy kids. It's also because people are living longer. If the average lifespan used to be 38 and now it's 70, yeah, your population is going to It's not just that there's certain groups that are just having, kids all the time. I mean, we're not all Mormons. And fine to them if they want to do that. Cool.
Yeah.
Anyway, I'll see what you guys want to say on any of this.
I think the thing that we sort of forget is that since mass media has come along, it's been much easier to sort of project an ideal onto the world. And then all of the sort of most popular shows have very small families, under 3 children in any sitcoms, mostly. And I think the dawn of mass media has influenced people in a way that they don't understand. And I think when it comes to sort of my age group, like 24 to 35, we sort of taught that we need to go out and find our career and then find our partner if we ever find a partner. And at some point in our 30s, then we might look at children. But, we can have so much fun if we don't have children. And that leads back into this whole idea of child-free being a ideal almost.
Yeah. Well, when I was growing up, there was the Huxtables, and they had like 5 kids. And there was 8 is enough. Remember that? 8 is enough. Someone had 8 kids. The Brady Bunch had 6 kids. And all of a sudden it became, and I think without, obviously the market, the market that people are trying to reach changes, and you have friends and nobody's having kids, or they have kids later on. Or and then it was, now I'm trying to think, that if there's kids, and I think the last show I watched, it was really kid focused, was Succession. And that's not an advertisement to have kids. I think those people, but it could have been, they didn't have the best father and mother. But do you remember that, Garrett? There was 8 is enough. There was the Huxtables. They had 5 kids. Roseanne had 3. Yeah, there's 3.
And then we had Friends and Seinfeld, and they have no kids.
Yeah, they have no kids. Or Rachel had 1, and then Chandler and Monica had to adopt. That was, and Phoebe had her brother's kids. I mean, not like his, but she carried the
triplets.
The triplets. So that you get this idea that somehow, this thing that what used to be the norm and still is, I think most people still have kids, even in the West. Maybe not all of the West anymore. I don't know how it is in I'm sure like Iceland, and it's kind of interesting that the places that it can't be all economic or purely economic, because, or at least social system, because Scandinavia does not have a very high birth rate, yet they have, compared to the United States and the UK, like 2 years of parental leave that can be shared with the father and the mother, and they can't, whoever they're working for can't just be like, oh, sorry, no more job for you. But even there, the birth rate is I don't think it's at replacement level. I don't think, but I'm not sure. So it's this idea that somehow I don't know, it's a double-edged sword. So it's very dialectical. It's a double-edged sword. Like, I don't want to be like, it's nice to have be able to I'll just call it family planning, to have sex without, always rolling the dice of getting pregnant and all this stuff. But on the other way, this idea, I think it's also something problematic that most people don't have, more people aren't having kids. I don't think it's good for maturity. I think there's this weird, I don't know. It's just this idea that's odd, that somehow having kids has become like Coke or Pepsi almost, like when it's kind of like, well, and I don't know, and maybe that's just the way that cultures are going, and we're going to have a decrease in population. Of course, that's bad for growth. I don't think that's really good for socialism to have a pronounced dive in population. But I don't know. But you two are child free. I had 3 kids, so I don't have to tell.
I'm not child free. I'm not child free.
I know, but
Tara.
I'm sorry. Yeah, she's. Yeah, I'm just. Yeah, I know. I know you wouldn't say that, and I would. Yeah. So, Zulaika is not a mom. She would. I think she plans to be someday. I'm a mother. Zulaika's not a mother yet, and Garrett's not a father. But yeah. So, yeah. Which reminds me of something else before we get into that. Is that no? Finish that, and then we'll get on to this weirdness of having to have an identity for a lack. Is weird. It's like I'm not a brother. Do I have to have an identity? Do I have to a word for me to denote that I'm not a brother? Oh, yeah. Anyway, sorry. Go ahead, Garrett.
There's a Marxist leader in the U.S., Caleb Maupin, who likes to point out that the origin of the word proletariat in Latin means those who have children. Because apparently
I'm the proletarian here, baby.
And I think
That's right. You ain't no proletariat. I'm the proletariat.
The ruling class in Rome sent their children away to private schools and to military schools.
Oh, that's true. Yeah.
So it was the common
have them and then send them away.
Who would have their children hanging around them.
There you go. Yeah, I can't get rid of them. Zulaika, you want to say something? Your audio is going in and out. It's like So I don't know I don't know. You're crackling. Sometimes if you're on the computer, yeah, not the phone. Yeah, I can't hear you at all now. Weird. I can't hear you. If you want to type in what you want to say, or maybe we'll try it in a moment, and I'll breeze. There's something I wanted to say, but did I miss it? Oh yeah, I know. I fast forwarded. Okay. Oh, that's a bit better. Can you say something again?
Okay. Yes. What I was going to say was you have to remember that the class of people who are doing this stuff belong to a certain class, and it's not really the proletariat that they belong to. I mean, there are I think it's probably the smallest amount of.
Hold on a second. Garrett, does it? Sorry, hold on, Zulaika. Garrett, does it sound weird to you?
Yeah,
I can't.
Breaking up.
Yeah, you're breaking up quite a bit, which is a bummer. But I think I got the gist of what you were saying is that there's a class component in this. So the people talking about the people most likely to tout child free are probably from the, like, again, it's very bourgeois, very kind of professional, urban professional women that are driving this thing. They want to be like, and it started, if you remember, like Sex in the City. I remember when I don't know if it was when Miranda had a kid, or I don't know what it was. Or I don't know, it was somebody's birthday. It was something. And there was like this idea, well, where is it? Like, we have Mother's Day, but we don't have just like Single Girls Day or the idea that that there should be. And it's just so weird to me. It's like, well, and it's the same thing. A lady asked me, I think it was a lady. She's like, well, what should we call women who don't have kids then, if we're not going to call them child free? And I just wrote back, woman. I mean, it's like, and it's so funny. It's like, why do we need these titles? I think there's just like this inflation of identities now. It's like, okay, if you're a woman and you have kids, you're a mother. If you're a woman and you don't have kids, then you're not a mother. There's no reason to, then you're a woman. Why do we need a word for a woman who isn't a mother? Or a man who isn't a father? It's just weird to me. It's like
single gals.
Yeah, I mean, and it's also this idea, well, there's lots of things I don't have. I don't have a car. Am I car free or am I carless? And why is this important? And this idea that somehow has to be right in front. It's like, I'm rarely asked if I have kids. Because usually either I'm if I'm at a school thing, or I'm with, then obviously people can tell I have kids because, I got the kids with me, one or more. I have 3 of those crazy people. Love them, but or if you're having a conversation with somebody, or if you're at work, you're out and about, and it comes up, oh, do you have kids? And either they say yes or they say no. And if someone says no, I'm not going to be like, oh, childless. You don't think that.
You don't think
and I'm also
crisis?
not going to be like, oh, child free, dodged a bullet. No, I'm just going to be like, oh, okay. And then you move on. It's like, it's weird. I don't know what you make of it. Do you want a word for a person, for a man who doesn't have kids? Do you need to have a particular fancy word?
You're in denial of the child-free phobia in the society. The stigmatization.
Yeah. It's so stigmatized, the child-free or the childless. I mean, I also think that, I mean, I'm sure there are some families I know that put pressure on their kids to have kids, but anymore, I at least this is my impersonation, like that they're fighting battles that were won like 30 years ago. And you're occasionally going to have some guy. There's going to be Matt Walsh, be like, oh, these childless women, and they're the reason why everything's crazy because they don't have children, so they're like, turning everybody into infants. Okay, there could be something to that. It's not the overriding function or feature, and certainly not all women do that, but whatever. But this idea that somehow all adults who don't have kids are somehow spurned, I'm like, where is this happening? Now, India is a bit different. I know I have friends whose parents get very nervous. They're great. They're fine with their girls going to college. But as soon as they graduate from college, they're like, okay, we got to get you married. Got to get you married off. And there's this pressure. And then the people in their family also putting pressure on them. When is your daughter getting married? When is she getting married? Oh, she's 25 now, or she's 26 now, or she's 27 now. So I'm not saying it doesn't happen, but let's put that to a side. Let's talk about the UK, Western Europe, and the United States. Where is this like, oh, you childless men and women, or, lepers or something? It's like the whole fucking world is set up around these people. At least in terms of leisure, largely, and entertainment, it seems. It's like, and this is the other thing about how, anyway. So I'm just confused. But I'm not. I have kids. So you tell me. Do you feel like you're stigmatized, Garrett, because you don't have kids? Maybe you are. Maybe you're an oppressed minority. I don't know.
No,
I don't want to assume.
I don't. Maybe we should start talking about the crisis in natal phobia.
Yeah.
No, but I don't know. No, I don't know where all of this is coming from. At least where I am in a pretty urbanized area.
Yeah. Like people aren't going, oh, look at he's child-free. He doesn't have kids. Watch out for him. Probably a perv. Those child-free guys, And Zulaika, how is it for? I mean, you're quite young, but I mean, just in your let's use the lingua franca. In your experience, in your lived experience on your journey so far, do you find that women that don't have kids are oppressed minority? Could be.
I didn't say so, but sorry, I'm just thinking. I'm very close to becoming one of my girl cousins who hasn't had a child yet. Okay. So it might be, but I wouldn't say so, because they're just like, oh, well, you're a feminist. But I know a lot of people who are far more feminist than I've ever been, because I'm very skeptical of feminism, who have had children, have basically just finished university and have had a child out of wedlock, and like, oh, whatever, nothing. At the same time, there's been sort of not exactly a change in them, but they seem a lot more settled than the rest of us, which is great, honestly. Yeah. So I still.
I'm just gonna repeat what you said because hold on. I'm sorry. I'm just gonna repeat what you said because your sound, to me at least, is still shaky. So it sounds like there's a I don't know. Anyway, it's just too bad. We'll get the sound figured out for next time, because we want to hear what you have to say from your own voice. But let me paraphrase: is that, from my understanding, is that not really, and that you're one of the few cousins. So you have cousins, and you're the one of the few that hasn't started a family yet. And there's some that have a family that are married, some that aren't, and then it does seem to settle them, to kind of ground them in a way which you think is, not a negative thing. So again, it's all how you phrase it. See, like, oh, it's a reduction in sovereignty. Like, I have to, like, I'm burdened. Like anything that's an obligation in this, and especially in this space, is automatically bad. Like, God forbid you have an obligation. Anybody besides yourself and your desires. So it's like, yeah, it's like, of course, if you have a kid, unless you're like totally gonna neglect them, obviously it changes your life, especially well, I mean, for a long time, but especially in the beginning, because they're dependent on you for everything. But the idea that somehow it's like, yeah, there's things I had to forsake, because sacrifice. Like, I had some fantastic vacations until I had kids, and now I'm getting to the point where we could actually have a decent vacation again, that's not kid focused. Yeah, that's actually, because they can all be doing on their own things. But it's this weird thing, like somehow I'm kid free, like I don't have the obligation, I'm currently a burden. It's like, well, then you're gonna stay a child forever. You're gonna be really narcissistic. And not that a kid, not that having kids is some sort of magic wand that's going to turn every asshole or dipshit into a fantastic person. I mean, I don't want to make that case, but this idea that somehow, and this is where the Marxists who say they're Marxists, who are pushing this abolition of the family, come in, like, oh, we should be relieved of these obligations. It's these oppressive obligations. It's like, do you mean love and commitment and discipline? How terrible. It's like, yeah, it's like, I think that these people, like, did they have, like, they must probably, some of them probably I think most of these people who push this crap probably came from fairly good families or want to get married. And actually, one of the ladies who wrote one of these Abolition of the Families book got married like 4 years ago. I mean, to a trans woman, but whatever, she got married. So it's just like this weird thing that anything's a burden. But so this language is, I'm like, so the child free positions children as a burden to be avoided, casting them in a negative light, whereas childless suggests a lack or an absence, that they're missing something essential, that somehow, they can't be a complete person, or in different ways if they don't have a kid, which I think is it's becoming fast a very quaint notion. But defining oneself as child-free, there's an implicit suggestion that children are an impediment to freedom and happiness. And of course, this can contribute to, obviously, the idea that people want to say this child-free thing doesn't cast kids in a negative light. It's like, are you kidding me? I'm child-free. It's like, what else? You think I'm cancer-free? I'm debt-free. I'm herpes-free. Whatever it is, like my flare-up's gone. You don't be like, you're free of something that is implicit that you don't want to, that is negative. Yeah. And again, if you don't want to have kids, I'm all like, don't have kids if you don't want to have kids. But this idea is just really odd. And also because, it's like somebody has to raise the next generation. They don't just pop from the sky. It's like, it's almost like you have to take people to where to the farm to see where the vegetables and the meat come from. It's like people have to have the kids.
Amen.
All these people who do things with you and for you, usually, of course, because you're paying them, somebody had to give birth to them and raise them. You can't just get them from Amazon.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know. It's odd to me. So
I think this conversation is an example of conservatism that is not reactionary. Which is
what do you mean?
Well, just, I mean,
me being conservative but not reactionary. Okay.
Well, wanting to conserve wanting to conserve the family is in some respect conservative, but it's not overall reactionary or wanting to go back to the 19th century or
No.
18th century or whatever, which is kind of like the distinction that I was trying to make in my my article. And I brought up Edmund Burke because Edmund Burke, he writes very eloquently about like social conservatism, and he writes it in his book denouncing the French Revolution, because he tries to I don't know, he tries to sort of conflate like social conservatism with political and economic conservatism, when in fact they're quite distinct things. But as I said in the article, like there's a lot of populists on the right and even some on the left who like have become more sympathetic to Edmund Burke because he talks about social conservatism and things like family bonds so eloquently in that book, Reflections on the French Revolution. And there's a lot of great stuff in that book about that. But then he conflates that with like general conservatism to the point of being reactionary. And that's a distinction that we should really always make.
Yeah, and it's just so weird to me that and Zulaika wants to say that she's communicating to me through chat because we're having audio issues that we'll try to figure out before the next time we meet. We'll just we'll come on stream at some point just to figure that out. But she's saying, I think the majority of women my age and older within my circle have a community to help them raise their children, and with mass media in recent years have focused on rather isolated maternal experiences. I would say that's true. Yeah, I could see that if you come from if you're to use a terrible thing, I think Hillary Clinton said that it takes a village to raise a child. But if you're not isolated, if you don't feel like it's all on you or you and your partner, that you're going to have someone who can help you out, or that if you're really stressed out, can be like, I just need an hour to take a walk. Can you handle my kids so I don't punch them in the face? I'm saying that facetiously, but sometimes the kids can get to you, and you're like, look, to be able to have someone, even if you're a single mom or dad, or if your partner's not there, to be like, I just need a day. I just need like an hour, or can you just, to have that help, or to have a quote unquote child-free evening or day, or even a week, or whatever. If you have friends or family members who can take that, I'm sure that, that matters. You don't feel like it's all on you, that somehow you have to make enough money and raise a kid or kids on your own, whether if you're one person or with somebody. I wanted to say something, and then we'll get to the Kamala video if I can remember what I wanted to say. Maybe not. Oh, yeah. Okay, yeah. Sorry. We'll have to wrap up here because we look at. I've gotten almost 3 hours out of you, Garrett, and I know that you're. Well, I'll try to, and I'll try to be conscious of the time. So one of the things I'm curious about, again, this idea about when someone asks me, well, what should we call women who don't have kids? I'm like, well, women, or what should we call men who don't have kids? Like, well, men. And I'm wondering that why do we need a term, or do they feel that we need a term to denote men and women who don't have kids? So I'm just asking the question, what political, economic, and cultural interests does this distinction serve? And also, if we decide that we need a term, or they want a term for this subgroup, then why not non-parent, or something like that? Because it's more appropriate and it leaves kids out of it. You're not childless or child-free. Either you're a parent or you're not. And I have an idea why they don't want that, because it makes them like they're skirting out on their responsibility, which they are in a way.
Well,
Go ahead.
Let me extend the social conservatism and say that there's usually a perfectly good word that already exists that we've just forgotten about and we need to rescue from the past.
Bachelor, yeah.
Yeah, bachelor, exactly. And bachelorette, which is
yeah.
Excellent.
Not old maid. That wasn't very nice. Old maid wasn't nice, but just, single.
Bachelorette.
Yes. Yes. So there is a Kamala video that Zulaika shared. Let me see if I can find it. I will go to it. And the messages, Zulaika. Yeah, here she is. Okay, I'm going to now I'm going to have to share my screen, and this is it's not a very long video, but it's something Kamala is saying that fits in to this conversation. Let's see. Share screen. Sarah Fields. Okay, let's see if I can.
Half by 2030. And so we set an ambitious goal to cut our greenhouse gas emissions in half by 2030 and to reach net zero emissions by 2050. The investment we are announcing today will help us to achieve these goals, and it will do so much more. Because think also about the impact on not only the local economy, not only on an investment in the entrepreneurs and innovators from and in the community, think about the impact on something like public health. When we invest in clean energy and electric vehicles and reduce population, more of our children can breathe clean air and drink clean water. And so we set an ambitious goal to cut our.
Yeah, it's always looking there in the background, I think, of the climate discourse we have now.
I just like
Well, it's like who's gonna go ahead, Zulaika, go ahead.
I like how she just sort of sneaked it in.
Yeah.
Totally.
It's
Well, again, it's this
very,
idea
very
that
subtle,
yeah.
and then they all cheered.
Yeah. Yay! Yeah. No, I mean, and I think I think that's fair. I'm glad you brought that up because people like our consent gets manufactured so easily. So it's like a little bit here, a little bit there. Well, of course we have to reduce the population. Of course there's way too many people. Of course. It's like, well, hold on a second. Under what conditions are there too many people? If you want to continue living like, the average middle class family in the States, yeah, then you have an issue. Because not a lot of then whatever that, and again, assuming that's right, that it would take like 6 planets or something like that. Again, people say that, and people we all have to remember that if we see something that bolsters what we already think, we take that in like oxygen. It's way much harder to be like, well, wait a minute, what is this? And that's for it's just maybe it's quote unquote human nature that you really have to work on being skeptical. Go ahead.
I don't even know if that's true, honestly.
Yeah.
That the planet can't sustain, a middle class lifestyle. I mean, obviously. Yeah. I mean, I do think.
I mean, in terms of like the profligate, like a TV every 2 years, a phone every 2 years, this kind of throwaway thing. I don't mean like a nice, like a decent, house and
They've been saying that for a while, probably the last 30 years. And I've not been alive that long, but it's been since I was in school and I left school more than a decade ago now. They've been using that catchphrase. It's a catchphrase just like random woman. It's that same kind of manipulative, comes out of nowhere. Nobody knows where it comes from. People just say it.
Yeah, and then you hear it enough times, you think, oh, well, that's some, yeah. And the more something is said, the more you think there's something to it. Well, I think that, I don't know if that was what the reification was, what was part of the reification thesis that, now I can't remember that guy's name, but anyway, some Marxist dude. I remember his name. Lukács, yeah. But yeah, and you hear, you're like, oh, okay. And then it's all of a sudden like, why are we supposed to hate carbon? Why is carbon the Antichrist? What? Like, carbon. It's like, well, okay. It's like, yeah, I'm aware that if, we learned that's okay, that the carbon molecules, and of course in the methane, I think the methane stays longer. Or is it the carbon that stays longer? I don't know, there's one or the other.
The methane stays longer.
Okay.
Yeah.
But then that's the idea.
Is based on modeling, and all this stuff is based on modeling and computer models, and I've just gotten so much more skeptical of that stuff with all the COVID stuff and all the false, all of the shady science, all of the garbage in, garbage out computer models, and then that being used to determine policy.
Well, people think the models are God. It's like, and it's the idea that people who will be critical of pure economists, the mathematical model economists who don't figure in money and debt, but yet they'll totally buy into the environmental modeling or other kind of modeling. It's like, well, you don't know. You have to like, okay, well, what are they putting in their model? Yeah. What are they trying to get out of their model? And again, a lot of this stuff is common sense. I'm like, okay, yeah. So carbon, if we have more carbon than this, and it's going to be heating, and then we're going to have this issue, and then the water's raised and all that stuff. And of course, fine. But also, I think, well,
but it doesn't work in the real world.
But still, there's a lot of things on the planet that love carbon. They can't get enough of that shit. And it's like, and then what you're never told is the non-human contributors to climate change. And not that I'm not saying that what we're doing doesn't matter. I'm not an idiot, that I'm aware that what we do, in terms of what we do to the city and the ocean and the garbage and the methane and the carbon and the other stuff. But I'm also aware of the fact that, that some people are saying, and again, green isn't necessarily a forest. Like you could have some plants and trees. It's not necessarily, it doesn't make it a rainforest. But there's some people who are saying that the surface of the earth is getting more green. Why? Because we're producing all this carbon. And there's things, organic life, well, plants and algae and all that stuff, that like that shit. So and again, it also depoliticizes it. So either you make it about the kids, so we have too many kids, or you make it about carbon. Carbon's the problem. It's like, well, and then if you start questioning this when you're on our side of the fence, people want to silence you, or you sound like a right winger, you sound like a this or that, or you're a climate change denier, or you think that it's okay to have kids, or whatever. You think it's a sacrifice if we cut the population. Well, yeah, in a way. I mean, if you want, and again, I only use that word because I want to try to highlight, not so much for him because I could tell he was in it, but for other people, how religious the environmental movement has gotten. You have an end of days story, that if we don't do this, we're gonna have collapse, and and then the sacrifice that you have to make. You have to have less kids. Yeah, you have to consume less, and then who's this for? Mother Nature, the earth, whatever. It's like it's very and it's like, oh no, I'm an atheist. You can have a secular religion. There's people who think if you say you're trans, you magically become the opposite sex. It's like, come on, people. Mother Nature is by definition a metaphysical concept.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying it's we have concepts. It's fine. But the idea that they really can't handle the fact that they may not be the rational, scientific, logical, always side of this conversation. They just can't handle it. It freaks them out.
And maybe the less real
mad at me or whoever Zulaika. Like, I'm not telling you to have kids. I'm not telling you to birth up.
Maybe the less engaged you are with actual motherhood, the more you will fetishize this abstract motherhood.
Yeah, it's like the planet doesn't have feelings. Okay. And the planet will be fine until the sun dies or we're hit by a huge asteroid that like breaks us up. The planet will be fine. Us, on the other hand, and I'm not saying that there aren't species that, of course, and the other thing that people don't want to realize that all life requires death. Okay? That's just, whether it's an animal or an insect or a plant, you know. And I like to tell these vegans, you think the avocados don't kill life? Think again.
Yeah.
Not the kind of life you're interested in, but they're killing life. What you have to do to a field to grow up avocados? Come on now. And the water, please. But and just so quickly before we wrap up, I just want to highlight this lady said, I joined the child-free movement and discovered its dark side. I thought the groups would be positive and hopeful, but witnessed slut shaming of mothers online. Beth Ashley says her mother was degraded for being a single mom, and while she hoped that was the thing for a past, and this is a quote from the lady in the picture. I suppose and she's talking about stuff she heard in these quote unquote child-free groups. I suppose she expects everyone else to pay for her children. I quickly want to get on this because we talked about the biological imperative. But I want to get on what I call, and I love when you're able to turn around an argument on people, it's fantastic, and they hate it. So so the people that have kids as breeders or whatever, especially the ones that have lots of kids, it's like, I think Bill Maher maybe, and some others will make like the thing where, well, if I don't have kids, why should I, be paying for all my taxes go to all these social programs that support families, especially if there's people who are, single moms or single dads or people having too many kids and not being responsible. Why should I have to pay for that? And then, of course, you have a lot of in the States, a lot of school districts are based on property taxes. And if you have the more people you have in a school district that don't have kids or have kids that have aged out or kids who are going to private school, they become less inclined to pay for this. And so I try to turn this around. And so this theme is the free riders and the privatization of social reproduction. And by social reproduction here, I mean specifically like producing the next generation, having and raising the next generation. Those who identify as child-free will benefit from the labor and taxes of others' children, particularly when they become elderly. They enjoy the advantages of a functioning society supported by the next generation without directly contributing to the development and upbringing of that generation. This phenomena highlights the imbalance of the social contract, where the collective investment in future generations is essential for societal sustainability. Furthermore, the discourse, child-free, rationalizes the privatization of social reproduction, the idea that only those who have children should contribute to their development. This perspective undermines the social responsibility of raising and supporting children, shifting the burden entirely onto parents. It disregards the societal benefit of having a well-raised, educated, cared-for next generation, which ultimately supports the economy, social services, the community, etc. So I turn around that shit. You should be thanking me. I had 3 kids. Yeah. You're free riding off all us other people having kids. And I'm not talking about you, Garrett. Okay. But the child free, I'm child free. I'm so good. The idea that having a child is better than having one is very dark, I think.
Yeah.
And yeah. And for the rest, you can read the article because there's more. I'm not going to talk about all of it. And Garrett's going to say something, and then Zulaika wrote out a comment that I'll talk about, and then we'll wrap up. Go ahead, Garrett.
I mean, it really shouldn't be political at all. It's just that, as you said, like there is such a hegemony in hegemony in the culture, and it's linked to these actual agendas like reducing population. I think because nothing in the media,
them. Yeah.
Nothing in the media is totally apolitical, unfortunately. But it ought to be apolitical. It ought to be your personal choice, and that people don't judge you for it either way.
Mm-hmm. No, but I'm still maintaining the fact that if the more people who think not having a kid is better than having a kid is not a good thing, and not necessarily like they're bad people, like they're terrible, but it raised the question like what's going on here. That can't be an indication of a healthy society or culture when more and more people are consider not having kids to be better, not necessarily like just because they don't want to have them or not, but like it's a better thing for like for Kamala Harris would say, based on what she said, oh, if you don't have kids, that's good for the environment, it's good for the economy, it's good for the kids that are already here. You're really like, you should not. I mean, it's basically saying don't have kids. It's a good thing not to have kids.
Yeah.
Whereas I would totally agree, if someone doesn't want to have kids, I'm not going to force them. Thank God, I'm not going to do that. But it's just, Oh, it's a morbid symptom. That's what it is. It takes me a while, but sometimes I thank you. I got to remember, like, oh yeah, there's a reason I called the show that. Because like a lot of stuff, you could be like, oh, morbid symptom. Okay, so Zulaika said the thing antinatalists forget is that we have built infrastructure for billions, which needs to be maintained. How will it be maintained if only 500 million humans are left to maintain it, as some Neo-Malthusians, antinatalists, billionaires, etc. want? And this is one thing where Elon Musk stands out. He's one of the few uber rich who are like, have kids, and he's doing his part. I don't know how many of them like him. And of course, maybe, you can, just because someone's a kid doesn't mean they're fantastic. I don't know, he has like 13 now, 4 different mothers. I don't know. He's doing his part. But yeah, it's like, and this is the thing. I think it's because well, I'll see if Garrett wants to respond to what's like the comment I read out for her, because she's having audio issues, before I give my take. Do I need to restate it, or do you know?
About the infrastructure?
Yeah, so the idea that who's going to maintain all this stuff if we drastically and rapidly reduce the population?
Yeah, no, that's totally valid. And I mean, the whole thing is like hyper individualist. Like there's no social perspective when you taking this anti-natalist position. I mean, society is made up of other people's kids. I mean, it's as simple as that.
Someone had you too, people, and she's called you a mama, which means that there was a male involved at some point. Hopefully, persistently, but
yeah, but this is could be a neoliberal morbid symptom, definitely, that people see themselves as atomized individuals, and they rationalize that it's a good thing not to be accountable to anyone else.
And freedom is not owing anybody anything. It's like no. Well, I mean, you could say that's free in a way. It's a very impoverished. There we go. It's a very impoverished notion of freedom, and a very impoverished life. And it's like I can complain, and again, I can complain about my kids a lot because they're kids and whatever. But it's like, and I can imagine, because I have friends who did not have kids, and we were on similar trajectories, and I went one way and they went another, so I could have an idea of what that would have been like. But in the aggregate, I wouldn't trade it. It's like, yeah, it's or any other relationship that requires, God forbid, some level of sacrifice or compromise. I mean, I don't know what kind of relationships these people actually have. What kind of relationship with no obligation? It's not even a relationship. It's just like a contract or something. I don't know. It's just weird. It's like somehow I should have a relationship that just gives me, I guess, sexual satisfaction, or someone who can be on my arm when I go out. But other than that, fuck it. I don't want to be responsible to anybody or for anything. And that's freedom. And they associate that with Marx and Engels. They love having that one phrase, the abolish the family people, who are who say they're communists and Marxists. Oh, Engels talked about abolishing the family. They were critical of the bourgeois family. I would be hard pressed if they were like abolishing the family as such. And even if they were, they're not my fucking god.
Right.
And they had families.
Well,
Marx had a family.
Marx did, not Engels. But Zulaika.
No, Marx had a family. Yeah.
Oh yeah. I'm saying Marx did, not Engels.
Okay. Yeah. Sorry.
No, Zulaika had something good up on her Twitter feed, which was a chapter from Engels' book on the origins of the family, that I had actually cited recently in an argument with a radical liberal pseudo-Marxist, where when you actually read,
Marxist in name only, self-identified. Yeah. Those who self-identify, just because you put something in your bio doesn't actually make you that thing. But go ahead.
Yeah, well, like when you actually read through the book, like he says that even when the bourgeois family is eliminated, still like the nuclear family is the appropriate like formation for the modern world, for the industrial world.
Yeah.
Like in the pre-industrial world and in the pre-agricultural world, like hunter-gatherers and primitive communism. In primitive communism, you had group marriages and you had polyamory. And because of the change of, the society and the material foundation of society, marriage changes. But I mean, part of that is because of classical repressive patriarchy, and that's what creates the bourgeois family. But still, a nuclear family still is the most sensible, core social form for industrial society.
And for me, it's like just my personal experience. I spent enough time in countries where I think they call it the combined family is still quite common.
Mm-hmm.
And that's also, I mean, there's no perfect situation. That's also a double edged. So I use my knowledge of India because that's the country I'm most familiar with. And is that the combined family, so you have more than one generation under the same roof, so to speak. And in the city, usually you'll have maybe you have adjoining flats, or maybe you have, if you have more money, I know there's some, if you have more money, maybe you have maybe a 4-4 flat. And so each floor is like a different, it's like, here's mom and dad, and here's the son, and here's the other son, and maybe the daughter, but usually the daughter goes up. But anyway, so you have the family there, so to help with the childcare, but then you also have everybody in your business, and the women who I'll use my good friend as an example. I won't say she's an Indian lady. I won't say her name, but she actually had a love match. So her union was arranged, but they also were quite smitten with each other. So that's a good thing. So the parents arranged it, but they were in agreement. And she went to live. Of course, you get married and you go and move. And she went and moved. She lived at her husband's family's home in the village in Maharashtra. And oftentimes, what happens is that the mother then treats the daughter-in-law like a servant, like a slave. Yeah. And in some places, it's still the custom that you put. If you ever hear those, they have things on their ankles that make a noise when they're walking. It's not for aesthetics. It's so that the mother-in-law knows if the daughter-in-law is working or not. They're not tinking. You're not working. Okay.
Oh my
And
goodness.
now I'm not saying all mother-in-laws do this, but there is this cycle. Yeah. So you were treated like this. And then when you have a son or sons and they get married, and if the mother and the daughter-in-law comes to under your roof, and you get to rule that thing. And it was so bad, or at least my friend, also had fairly modern sensibilities. She would say that word. And she, after about a year and a half, I think, or 2 years, told her husband, look, I'm leaving. I hope you come with me, but I can't stay under your mother's tyranny, or whatever word she used. I got to go. And she was lucky enough that her mother wasn't on it, but she had a sister who was in a good enough situation, who said, yeah, you can, because she had one kid at this time. Yeah, you can come, because this is not an unknown thing. Yeah. And so, yeah, there's obviously problems to that. So for me, the reason why I brought that up is that I think the best case scenario is when you're in travel distance, relatively easily travel distance to other members of your family. Yeah. But that I would want to live in the same house, literally, with my mother, with my mother-in-law, and not that they were terrible people. I mean, they were, So I think that to have that in the general geographic vicinity, but have that also that privacy, so you can maintain that, I think is ideal. Not everybody can have it, and that might not be for everybody. I'm not saying every Indian mother-in-law is a tyrant, but a lot of them are. And I remember when I first found that out, because I bought those on the street. So I thought, oh, it's so funny. They're like clink, 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 and I'm walking around in my sari, and I got the clinking going on. And then when someone told me what those were for, like their function, I was like, oh my God. Why aren't you moving? So
Yeah, it's
Just
not
a,
all.
yeah. Anyway, I'll read my coda quick and then we'll wrap up.
Okay.
Um,
Hey, let me just say one thing about China.
okay, sorry, go ahead.
I think there's a geopolitical aspect to that.
The one child thing?
Well,
The
yeah.
one child thing?
Just,
Okay.
I mean, just to wrap it up to like,
Mm.
you know what I said about the French Revolution, and which we're initially going to talk about Venezuela today, and we didn't get around to it. But I think like
I think I'm running out of steam, so we'll have to do that.
That's okay. That's okay. That's okay. But I mean, like from revolutionary France to revolutionary Venezuela, socialist Venezuela, like any country that's like out of step with like the global order, and the global order is like hostile towards them, and often waging siege warfare or even direct warfare on them. Like things tend to go bad in that country in some way, and they do problematic things. And the one child policy may have been an example of like a problematic thing that they felt they had to do because they were impoverished by being cut off from the global economy. Through the first 30 years of their existence. Yeah, that's just something I want to throw in there about China. It's not really a model, that Marxists or pro-China people should be looking to.
Okay, and Zulaika wanted to say, I do think that this is an inevitable consequence of forcibly atomizing the family in the first place, and quote unquote, they don't read books. When she's talking about people who want to quote like, Marx was for the abolition of the family. Go ahead, Zulaika.
I wanted to add something to Garrett's point. I think part of the reason that China did it is that the UN had a lot of financing or aid to countries who were prepared to reduce prepared to abide by family planning measures, which were organized, especially with the United States, but the ideology behind it was very, very much influenced by Margaret Sanger, I was going to call her the abortionist, but yeah, the founder of Planned Parenthood.
Yeah.
So
your sound is still struggling. So let me see if I got that. Let me see if I understood the gist of your question, and let me know if I didn't. So she was wondering if one of the reasons also why another factor that China did that was because of the kind of the UN positions, and also the positions of people like Margaret Sanger and whatnot about family planning and variety of other things. If that was an aspect of it as well, is that basically what you did? I miss something, Zulaika, or is that okay? It's okay.
I don't.
Oh yeah, aid. Okay, yes, yeah. So of course, the carrot and the stick. So oftentimes, if you're going to get aid, then you have to, at least on paper, say you're going to do certain things. Yeah. So if China was going to get aid, then they would have to look like, oh look, we're doing things to get the population under control. Yeah. So it could have been. So yeah. Okay. China. Yeah. So that could have been a factor, because I don't know. And I think it would be great to have somebody who knows about this, because one of the things about China is it's really hard to find information that isn't rah China's number one, or China's the devil and Mao is the beast, or whatever. It's hard to find that. And I've also found, because you can find stories about the one child policy. And again, it's how it's focused. Sometimes either there'll be personal history, so there'll be a handful of women, and they will cover like what that meant for them, or they focus on the corruption. And I'm not saying those things aren't valid or important, but in terms of why exactly they took that measure, and what was because of the that if it, obviously the imperial powers or the capitalist countries were not interested in helping their project succeed, And then you have the UN people who are the nice people who want to be humanitarians and be like, okay, yeah, we're fine with helping you with grain and with all this stuff, but you're going to have to do X, Y, and Z. And the best way to be like, oh, look, we're having this one child policy. Look, we take this seriously. We know we have to get our population under control. I'm sure that was also a factor. But it's really hard to find, at least for me, an account which is at least primarily factual, without so much ideology about either how, either this was just, it was a necessary sacrifice, and look how they came together. And then once they realized that the time had passed, they no longer, they had once there was the productive capacity was developed and they could reduce the one child policy, they realized negative consequences. I mean, and that all could be in a way true. But I think it's difficult, especially if you don't speak Chinese, because there's a lot of stuff that just isn't available. I think it's the same thing probably in Russia, that we're limited, especially if you can't read Russian. I mean, I'm kind of duolingual, but yeah, I mean, I don't read theory in Dutch. If I'm reading something that's more than like a child's story or a newspaper article, it needs to be in English, or I'm more like, I don't know. So I'm limited to that. So I don't want to come across as an expert. I'm not that people would think I was on the China one child policy, but I think it'd be a fascinating case, in particular with the themes that we've been talking about tonight, to get into how that changed over time. And then once you bring that in, I think it'd be kind of hard, because once you have people who are a few generations of people who wanted to have more kids or weren't allowed to, and you have the variety of problems, then to come around and be like, oops, well, sorry, that was a mistake. I mean, the party also has to present their decisions in a particular way, even though it's a one party system. So, and the internal politics of that, I wouldn't even want to wager, I guess. But I'm quite sure it's more complicated than what's been presented on the various YouTube videos and whatnot. Either the very, like, how great it was, or like as an example of solidarity and sacrifice for the good of the cause, or how much of it shows like, look, these terrible Chinese people enforced this population policy. And the irony of that is now you have people who are advocating basically the same thing, just using different language. So anyway, the coda, and then we'll get out of here. What did I say? The child-free discourse, while ostensibly about personal choice, reflects a deeper cultural, political shift with anti-family, anti-child, anti-social, and thus anti-women aspects. I could have said anti-humanism, anti-human, which again, a populist is not going to like that. Okay, any kind of populist, I'd imagine. Yeah, if you're like an anti-NATO populist, I'd be an interesting person to talk to. They probably exist. I mean, everything exists. As this ideology permeates the middle class, it fosters a societal environment that devalues family structures, marginalizes children, and casts, and here's an important thing, casts a skewing motherhood as progressive. Us dinosaurs who have kids. And me, I had 3. Can't control myself. To address these issues, it is essential to reaffirm the value of families, children, and motherhood. Oh my God, I'm Barbara Bush. It is not necessary to celebrate, and here's where I leave it with: it's not necessary to celebrate or disparage those who don't become parents. So, kind of ended on a sour note, or not a sour note, but a in between one. So. Oh my God, 3.5 hours. Zulaika, thank you. You're going to come on again. I love this. We're going to figure out your audio. It could be your end, my end. It could be who knows what. It could be deep state. I don't know what's happening. It could be the we pissed off the child-free people. They're out to get us. I don't know. Garrett.
It was a Chinese Communist Party.
Yeah, it's a friend of the show. Yeah, I got Benjamin Studebaker to agree to twice a month doing a Game of Thrones political roundup, and I got Garrett to agree to be the once a month. He's coming on once a month at least to do something. And I really appreciate you both. Garrett is. It's nice when you can trust somebody. So when they tell you something, if you don't have the knowledge base, you're like, okay, well, he may not be right, but he's not lying to me. It's nice. And it's good to be able to have that, because this is impossible to cover all this stuff. There's just no way. So we have to be able to have a certain level of source of information and interlocutors to trust until we're given a reason not to. So I really appreciate that. I want everyone to go and read his article on revolution, counter-revolution at the Social Populist Substack. Everyone should like, follow, subscribe me, Zulaika, Garrett. Also, if you like any of this content or like disliking it, please do like, follow, subscribe. If you can afford it, I know times are tough, you can become a Patreon. You can buy a coffee. I think I also have a tip button on X now, because I'm posting articles there. So you can see if that works. Any that's appreciated, all of it goes to supporting what I would like to continue to working on this, at least full-time, part-time. So Garrett, any last words before we say bye-bye?
And everyone
Or
should
no, until we say see you again, until we meet again on the StreamYard.
And everyone should call their mothers.
Yeah, call your mom
this weekend and tell them, "Thank you for having me, Mom."
Yeah, yeah. Especially if you're spouting gender nonsense and don't know what a woman is. Then you or the fantastic thing that people are coming at because of the podcast that I did with Alexander McKay. We're doing a follow-up. So he liked it, which is good. I'm like, yeah, bring it, Alexander. How they don't like being called genderborged. And Daniel Tutt responded in a particular Tutt way. Oh my God, that guy. Anyway, I don't care what you're saying. Let me tell you why. It's like, all right. But what was it that somebody said? Like, oh, you look at the dialectic of like we're trying to tell Zulaika and I something about how really wanting to have Marxism be in favor of or supporting of gender ideology, broadly understood, even up to the point of trans women or women, and saying no, but Marx said, and there's you're not, and they were telling me, they're like, we're constantly being told, right? Well, we're not dialectic, or we need to read Marx. Like, you first, fuckers. I mean, please, don't bring your bullshit to us. We actually have done the reading and the thinking, so calm down, and also common sense, please. Which not that common sense is always right, but you know what I mean. Like, and what was it? It was something like something about dialectic, blah blah blah, social superstructure, motive thing, which abolishes the differences between the sexes or something bullshit like that. And
you have to read to the end of the chapter, like Zulaika says. Read to the end of the chapter.
Yeah. And so then she was like, well, do you mean are you talking about sex differences, or are you talking about like ideas about men and women, because it's different? And I'm like, yeah, the sexual division of labor, aside from who actually has the kids, because we're not, I don't think we'll ever get to there. I hope we can actually have like some weird womb, like some sort of dystopian thing. But yeah, I mean, the sperm and the egg and all that. But outside of that, I'm like, yeah, the sexual division of labor is obviously dialectically linked to the mode of production. That doesn't mean that actually what sex is, women being adult human females and men being adult human males, is somehow affected at that level from the mode of production. Are you people out of your freaking mind?
Yeah.
I mean, it's just like,
and Lenin wrote this book. What is it called? Empiro-criticism. It's a weird word because it was like this word that they had around at the time at the turn of the 19th century. It was kind of like postmodernism, and it was kind of like the abuse of dialectics into like total idealism. Anyway, Lenin basically said that materialism first, then dialectics.
Yeah. Well, and it's so ironic, and it's like, and I wonder, and like, are these people like trying to troll us, or they really believe this? Like, they want to accuse us of being the idealists. Like, we're not being materialists. We're the ones not being Marxists. Like, listen, Marxism is not your affirmation cult. Okay? So if you want to, I mean, if you want, it's like, I'm not saying you can't call yourself X, Y, Z, Z, whatever you want. But this has fuck all to do with Marxism or materialism. It's actually Marxism and materialism cuts it down to the quick. So please. But it's like we're the idealists, and we're not being dialectical, and we haven't read Marx. It's like you don't know what the fuck you're talking about. Sorry. It's just crazy, and they're so confident. I'm like, do they really believe this? Do they really believe it? You have people in the bios. They're like trans, anarcho, communist slash, and then they'll have like Lenin, Marx, Engels, Mao, blah blah. I just think they just pick stuff that they think sounds cool and they put it there.
Yeah.
And then someone will ask me, well, if Marxism isn't about freeing oppressed people, and what it's about, I go, you go find me in Marx where it says it's about freeing oppressed people. You go find me that shit.
Well, the most oppressed. It's like they're finding the
it's
most
like exploited.
oppressed.
Okay.
So it's the trans able.
I'm like, well, yeah, it's like, no, that's not what it's about. It's like essentially how I see it, like pure Marxism, if there's such a thing. I think there can be such a thing. Okay, things can evolve. It's the science and the politics of overcoming the central contradiction of bourgeois society. That's what it is. Now, there's arguments about how to do that, and the science of it, quote unquote, the science of it, or the philosophy, the theory of it, and the practice of it can come in contradiction. We see that. That's why we have all these arguments. But it's not about all this other shit. Yeah, it's certainly not about freeing men from having to respect women's boundaries, you pervs. It's definitely not that. And it's so funny. It's like, if you want that, there's plenty of spaces. It's like, go to the gender studies, go to the postmodern stuff, go to the anarcho tech fetishist stuff. Go there. They're your people. You know? Not this. It's crazy. Or my favorite one. Well, you should really, like, again, one of these people that has like, I'm an anarcho, trans, Marxist, feminist, like, whatever it is that they are. Well, have you ever really gone and tried to listen to a trans person? I'm like, why do I have to do that? Why? Where in Marxism tells me that I have to care about people who want to be the opposite sex? Where is that? And I don't care. I'm not out to get you. Just don't care. You know, it's crazy. Like, I'm supposed to go and listen to, Dylan Mulvaney's story, or if I don't care about it, I'm not a Marxist or a materialist. Are they out of their minds? I don't even know, Garrett. And the people that let this happen, like the Tuts, who let all this crap in and then become captured because they want the numbers and petrified of being canceled. It's like, what the hell? But no, I'm right-wing transphobe. Like, whatever, dude. You're like a eunuch. You cut your balls off, and then and not only is that bad enough, you are displaying it like they're around your neck. One pink, one blue. Such an ally are you? Sorry, my rage is coming out.
Yeah.
These are my opinions, not Garrett's or Zulaika's, by the way. Come at me. Don't come at them. Any final words?
Don't trust anybody. I don't know what the update of this should be.
Poor Garrett. He's like, oh my God.
Don't trust anybody with 2 doctorates. No offense, Tara. I don't know how many doctorates you have, but
I only have one, and it was on accident. I had to do something. I was in Holland. What am I going to do? My Dutch wasn't that good. I had to continue with school.
Anybody with 2 doctorates is automatically sus.
I just have one. And I don't make people call me doctor because it's kind of weird. I always think that people, because even when I think doctor, I think like medical doctor, and I don't want people to think I'm a medical doctor. Right. Although every once in a while I want to add PhD to my name to be like, listen, people, not that PhDs can't be idiots, but you're gonna have to bring something, because I can pick up bullshit a mile away, because I actually was taught by some decent teachers. Like, I can evaluate an argument without, it's crazy. But also, like, no, if I just say it and I really mean it, then you should believe me. And if you don't, you're a mean person. That's my personal favorite. Yeah. And that's not just on the gender issue. That's on all kinds of issues. It's like, all right, or you're mean. I'm like, okay, well, I could be mean. I could be the most meanest person ever. It doesn't change reality. I'm the meanest bitch ever. 2 + 2 is 4. What do you want from me? Okay. I'm going on. Garrett, you're my brother from another mother. Haven't met you in person, but hopefully we'll one day and we'll have a nice cocktail because I'll be child free at that weekend. if I ever find myself in New Jersey, or my son's almost 18, so he can drink here, but he can't drink there, but whatever. Thank you, Garrett. Thank you. I really enjoyed your article. I really did.
Thank you.
And I hope everyone goes and reads it. Zulaika, thank you for joining. We're going to get your volume figured out. Zulaika had 2 more comments, and she had to type them in because her audio is doing weird, and then we really are going to say goodbye. Zulaika was saying this is in terms of our discussions with the trans Marxist, I don't know, pronoun mafia. I don't know what they are. It was sex change rhetoric obfuscated these dumb bleeps. Think Marx advocated for outsourcing reproduction. Yeah. Materialism and imperial criticism. She was helping you with the term there.
Yeah, that's the name of Lenin's book.
Definitely clip this part, Tara. Yeah, I'll clip it. Yeah, my roundabout. Just our debriefing. We'll end it because it was kind of an aside. Good call. All right. Thank you. Zulaika, do you want to pop in to say goodbye? Even crackly?
We'll try. Is that better?
It's all right. Just do it. It could, maybe it just sounds weird to me, and it could sound fine to other people. Yeah.
Okay. Yes, it was nice talking with all of you, even if it was most of that evening. And yeah, thank you, Tara, for inviting me on.
Yeah, thank you. Hopefully she comes back again, and we'll fix up the volume problem. And normally we don't go 3 hours and 40 minutes. Normally that's not the case. And if you do come on and you need to go, you can tell me you need to go. I won't keep you here like a prison.
Oh, it's fine.
Garrett?
I'm just enjoying myself.
Bye, everybody. See you next time. Don't let the bastards get you down. Have kids if you want to have kids. Have kids. It's good. It's a good thing to do. Bye, everyone. All right. So the first part of tonight's episode, live stream, we talked about revolution and counter-revolution, what populace needs to know, which is based on Garrett Ramirez's article, Substack, and the Social Populist. Please go check that out. We took a break, and the second part of the show was focused on my recent X article on the child-free discourse or movement, why it's natal, anti-woman, anti-child, anti-family aspects, and why we should be very suspicious of it. All right, thank you. Please do like and subscribe. It helps a lot. If you have a little bit of extra money around and want to become a Patreon, please do that. If you have a morbid symptom, whether it be cultural, economic, social, whatever that you think we should discuss or like to come on to discuss with us, please let me know. There's room on the Zoom, so to speak, or StreamYard. So take care, everyone. See you next time.